Yes, yes.
Yep, there we are. Sweet.
Yes, yes. Sorry I was late. I was so excited, this is true, about the news about Icarus Fest that I lost track of time. I was so deep into thinking about what this means for the festival and for the world. And the problem is we can't even announce it yet because we haven't. We'll probably be able to announce it by tomorrow. So everyone should pay attention to Icarus Fest, icarusfest.com, which is the website for the Icarus Festival coming up in Rutherford, New Jersey, June 8th to the 11th. So what we did was we just booked our whole comedy show. We're going to have, I think, at least 4 comics, and one of whom who the headliner is a big name who's we are so excited to have because he is exactly what Icarus Fest is all about. I think pretty much anybody watching this will know who this is and will be a fan of his. So we just signed him just a couple hours ago. And so since we haven't actually signed the paperwork, we can't announce it yet. But so anyway, pay attention to icarusfest.com for the announcement. It'll be on the site very shortly. I'll also put it on Twitter, but yeah. So,
let me share the site. Right now, we've got the day tickets are up. So if you just want to go for a day, we've got the GA.
We can't announce that we just added Clint Russell.
Oh, sweet.
Of Liberty Lockdown. He's on the front page there. Yeah, we just added Clint, which is awesome. This is the most stacked lineup ever. Yeah. I mean, when we did our Texas event, that was like 6 people, and that was six speakers, and that was huge. This is now more than double that. Maybe it's actually 3 times that because we have, I think, 13 journalist speakers, and then we have 4 or 5 comics, and then we have filmmakers, and we're going to be screening these films. This is also new. We're now announcing this now. We finally finalized the deals with the distributors for these. So we're going to be screening 4 films at Icarus Festival, each of which we have selected through, this is no joke, about 3 months of curating. And really, I mean, the three of us who are running Icarus Fest, we debated. Oh, and then we brought in a consultant.
Yeah.
Who should I give a shout out? I don't know. But
well, we could say this: he wrote the white paper for the William Carlos Williams Center. We had the author of the white paper of the William Carlos Williams Center consult on this event.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
Well, so we brought in a consultant who is also a very big podcaster. I can say that he's been on my show. How about that? Yeah. On Unregistered. But yeah, we brought him in. So 4 of us, I mean, no kidding, right? It was like 3 months of watching films, debating what to include in Icarus Fest. What were the films that we wanted to show that represented people's curiosity, getting them into places that harm them, right? I mean, that's who all the people at the Icarus Festival are. These are people who, as journalists or podcasters or artists or filmmakers, have been so relentless in their curiosity in pursuing either what they call truth or pursuing just new information, or also aggressive in their creativity and creating things that get them into trouble, that get too close to the sun, right? I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. So these films, we picked 4 films out of, we probably evaluated like 50 or 60 films. And these are classics from, across the 20th century, 21st century too. So these, we picked these 4. So Blade Runner, we're showing on Thursday night. I mean, I don't know if that even needs an explanation, but there's been so much talk about transhumanism, which is very much about, well, probably about getting too close to the sun, right? Making human beings more and more like machines in ways that could most certainly harm what we know to be human beings. And Joe Allen was on the show. He will not be at Icarus Fest, but this issue was introduced into my world by him, and so much more in Blade Runner. Of course, it's an iconic film. It represents a lot, not just transhumanism, but what the future holds, as of 1982, and a lot of it was quite prescient what that film showed. So it's also just a phenomenal film, one of the greats. It's also shot in the Bradbury Building in downtown Los Angeles, about 3 blocks from where I used to live. An amazing building. But yeah,
absolutely gorgeous. The whole question of what does it mean to be human, as we've been talking about AI for these past few weeks, it's just the film of the time right now.
Exactly. Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. The AI issue. Exactly. Right. What it means to be human.
Yeah.
Safe. I mean, again, this was, I think, one that was always on the list of films we were going to screen, because it's such a brilliant film. It also is, again, so prescient. And Jack Mason, who will be one of our speakers, proud to say, at Icarus Festival, he introduced this to me, not the film itself, but the importance of it. He explained how important it was in a really compelling way. So yeah, Safe is really about the COVID era, before COVID was a thing. So in 1995, this movie explores questions of social contagion and social hygiene, what used to be called social hygiene, social control in the name of public health, all these things. But it's also about various psychological conditions.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's really fundamentally about psychological conditions. So anxiety, fear, of the world. Really, it's a form of agoraphobia, I think.
The anxiety of the modern world. It's that you feel for some reason that something is wrong, but you can't articulate what it is. And maybe it's the radio waves, maybe it's the seed oils, maybe it's
paranoia is another theme here. Yes, so I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. It stars Julianne Moore, but it's widely considered to be one of the greatest sort of social commentary films of recent years. And then Unredacted, now I kind of wish we should probably change that title, because it was recently retitled. A lot of people probably know its original name, which is Jihad, Rehab. And this is really exciting. We just finished the deal with Meg Smaker, who's the filmmaker, to screen this. And she's also agreed to be part of a panel discussion about it, which is really about the war on terror more broadly, U.S. policy in the Middle East more broadly. It's a phenomenal film. It's quite nuanced, but the important thing about it is that it was canceled. And I mean canceled. So this is hilarious. This has never happened in the history of filmmaking, as far as I know. The film was at all the big film festivals just a year ago. The big ones, Sundance, Cannes, all those, the biggest ones, and then won a bunch of awards at those festivals, did fantastic. So it was all set up to go. Within, I think, 2 months after that, every single festival this film appeared at renounced the film and apologized for screening it. I watched it. I studied it. I have my issues with it, but they certainly don't rise to, demanding censorship of it. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's really well made. And I think it presents a point of view on the war on terror that is certainly close to our side, certainly close to the non-interventionist side, but was seen by many as containing stereotypes of Muslims. It's about 4 men who go through this training center, or this sort of really an indoctrination or acculturation center in Saudi Arabia. They were jihadists who were captured, then finally released, and they were put through this center that trained them to be good citizens.
These people also were never charged with a crime, never convicted with a crime. That's something that they make explicit in the film, and that I think we should note, which is very characteristic of the war on terror. That no due process at all.
Right. Yes. The main theme, though, I'd say of the film is the attempt to make Islamists, and they were all Islamists, they were jihadis, into productive, functioning, orderly citizens of the Middle East. And that's where the film got into trouble with the scolds of the world, because you sort of see the stark differences between cultural expectations in a place like Saudi Arabia and here, and if they're just radically different. And so anyway, it became canceled. It's a canceled film. It's widely reviled, but we're going to have an incredible panel assembled of big time journalists and others on the war on terror. You can look at the our speaker list to get a sense of what I'm talking about here, with Meg Smaker to debate this, to debate all of this, all these questions. So it's going to be huge.
Yeah, man, this is the theme with the next movie too, is that the idea of stereotypes being a cancelable offense. And as we all know, stereotypes have no basis in reality at all. They were just completely made up by racists who believe the opposite of reality. But in this case, this is a documentary, and these are these people in their own words right in front of you. These are real people, and you can't come out of the theater without empathizing for these people in some way. Especially the Icarus theme, a lot of these, what they all say is, I was just 16 years old at the time. I didn't know what I was getting into, you know? It's
yeah, talk about flying too close to the sun. I mean, that's another clear theme here. Yeah.
They were behaving as honorable men in their eyes. Last one, the greatest movie ever made, Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, so again, credit to Jack Mason for this. He has a legendary podcast episode of The Perfume Nationalist in which he discusses Gone with the Wind. And I had never thought about it in any of these ways before, but he convinced me with quite a brilliant argument about its greatness. He considers it the greatest film of all time. And even if you don't consider it to be that, it is nonetheless undeniably, an excellent movie, but according to anyone's standards. Now, it does contain characters who are Black who do resemble to some extent what might be called Black stereotypes. And this is why this movie has been totally canceled. In fact, it was a bit of a struggle to figure out how to screen it, because the studio, whoever owns it, is trying not to allow it out. It won multiple Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It was universally considered one of the greatest movies of all time until about 5 years ago, when the woke revolution began. And it was also a commonplace in almost every city there would be one theater in almost every city that would show Gone with the Wind on a regular basis, like every week or every month. There were film festivals all over the country that showed Gone with the Wind annually. It was like a part of their regular programming. And now you can't see it anywhere except at Icarus Festival. So we're going to do that. And we're going to have a panel, which features Jack, by the way. So Jack will be on the panels for Safe and Gone with the Wind and others. And it's going to be off the chain, as they say.
Yeah. That's the thing. I love old movies. I love old controversial movies. And it's so hilarious that portrayals of slave plantation life are seen as nothing but hateful stereotypes, nothing but the opposite of the truth once again. When if you think about it, I don't know, which would be more historically accurate? Something that was made within the lifetime of actual slaves still being around, or something that was made, I don't know, a couple years ago, completely removed from it?
Well, I am the most revisionist historian of American slavery there is. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a big thing to unpackage. But yes, most of what we know about American slavery is myth, is made up, or gross exaggerations. And I mean, the character of it, the quality of it, the amount of punishment that was meted out to slaves, the number of rapes or the ubiquity of rapes. These things happened, of course. There were whippings and floggings and rapes, but far, far, far less than we are led to believe. Of course, modern, the contemporary woke culture wants us to believe that the slave plantation was just a torture chamber. That's all. And that was the purpose of it, was to torture. The purpose of slavery, right? The very stupid left-wing belief is the purpose of it was to punish Black people. Like, it wasn't not to get cotton picked, and amass wealth. It wasn't that. It was just for sadistic reasons. They dragged these people from Africa over here and then lived with them for generations because they hated them so much and just wanted to cause them pain and suffering. Yeah. There's so many myths about slavery, and Gone with the Wind was made. It was first a novel well before, not just wokeness, not just before like the new left that created the textbooks of the 1960s and 70s that rewrote slavery, before World War II. And so none of the current racial liberalism that's dominant was around in 1939 when the movie came out. So it was kind of free from all that. Now, of course, it belonged to older mythologies. I'm not denying that there's, this was like objective reporting or anything, but it's an incredible opportunity to view a great work of art that was made at a time when the censorship and the cultural discourse was radically different than now. So, and then it gives us an opportunity to think about whether, to what extent the stereotypes are true. And I'm always down to have that conversation, even though it's, a pretty dangerous one. But, and then if the stereotypes are true to any extent, what does that mean about our valuation of Black people and Black culture? Do we think it's superior or inferior? Because my view is that the more they're close to this, the closer they are to the stereotypes, Black culture, the closer it is to stereotypes, the more superior it is to the dominant white culture, according to my values, not in some absolute moral sense, but just according to what I like in the world. Generally speaking, and historically, not so much contemporary Black culture, but like until about 5 years ago, like it just produced almost all the stuff that I really enjoy in American culture. There's a lot of things I appreciate and need and want that were not created by Black culture. But in terms of the stuff that brings fun and pleasure and happiness and joy, it's, you look down south and you look to the south side of Chicago and you look to Harlem for the source of, most of that good stuff. And I'm not alone in that. Between the Blacks and the gays and the Jews, they've produced almost anything that's fun in American culture. I mean, what fun part of American culture was not created by one of those three groups? I mean, maybe sports would be about the only one. Of course, they dominate the sports. Jews used to dominate all the sports. People don't know that until World War II. And then after World War II, of course, Blacks dominated the sports. So yes, I mean, there's no area of American fun that wasn't created and is dominated by one of those three groups.
Well, I hate to backpedal here, but I hate how the censors are so privileged in discourse about everything, in that, like, Gone with the Wind contains so much more than stereotypes.
Well, that's
like,
it. Right.
It's like it's completely incidental. It's just how they viewed the world and the things at the time.
Right.
And nowadays, to fight to keep art alive, you have to meet these censors on their battlefield, and you have to constantly fight their battles. When really, this is a 4-hour historical epic that touches on the entirety of the human experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to show something like this to prove what we are at stake of losing if we keep going down the path of cancel culture, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's a very close examination, you could say, the movie is in the novel, of, the real meaning of the Civil War, sort of on a political level, but then on a deeper level, it's really a study of relationships between especially men and women, and between slaves and masters, and between friends, and between family members. I mean, it's a very close study of the most important things in our lives, not just political things. And that is not and it's also, again, free from all the constraints of recent political correctness. So you just don't see that kind of free examination of such things these days in pop culture. So yeah, it's an amazing film, and it needs to be seen. Again, it won all the Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It was on the top 5 of every critic's all-time list until 5 years ago, when it was basically banned. So this is one of the very few places in the country you can see this movie anymore. Will be Icarus Festival. It's ridiculous, but that's true. So that's why people should come.
And you'll see these films in a gorgeous Art Deco theater.
Right. The Rivoli Theater, 650 seats, Art Deco, 1920s. That's the heart of the Williams Center, although there's other stages the festival will be on at the center. But yeah, that was one of the reasons I was really excited to do this project with the Williams Center, because of that. Yeah. Well, we should talk about news, though.
Yeah. So you're distracted by the good news of everything happening with Icarus Fest. Please go to IcarusFest.com. But I've been distracted by Fishtank. Have you heard of this? Have you been following this?
No.
It's Sam Hyde's latest project. It's a reality show like Big Brother or Real World, where they get a bunch of people in a house, and he found some weirdos off of Craigslist. And normally you'd think the idea would be to troll them and make their lives a living hell, which he has done to some extent, but it has the biggest heart and biggest soul, and it is the craziest, like, it is consuming my life. It is the greatest thing ever made.
Is it on YouTube?
It's on fishtank.live, and you'll see
Okay.
memes of it on all your social medias and little highlights popping up everywhere.
Did this just start?
It started 10 days ago. We're on day 10.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard anything about it.
Yeah. But yeah. So please, you might have to carry this episode because
that's all you're thinking about?
Yeah. That's
Fishtank. So it's a Sam Hyde reality show?
Yes. Sam Hyde has basically constructed a 24/7 live streaming reality show.
Oh my.
Every
24/7.
Yes.
Live stream. Oh gosh, you're in the house with them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whenever you want to be.
There are some psychopaths in the chat that are watching like every little twitch that happens while they're sleeping, and
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then what's the premise besides that?
There's money at stake. There's challenges that they have to complete, and the last fish in the tank. There's eliminations. So the last fish in the tank, I think, wins $20,000, which is, for some people that's a life-changing amount of money. So yeah.
How is it different than other similar reality shows besides the 24/7 camera?
Well, the 24/7 camera exposes the producers to a big extent. Like there have been real crises that have happened.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you get
right.
to see how they react to it, and they treat these people like human beings, and they've handled it in a very in a way that they have to be Sam Hyde, the type of troll that he is, but he also has to be, constantly aware that a lawyer might come after him, and that constantly aware that he doesn't want to screw up somebody's life forever. So
yeah, it's a high wire act.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a brilliant premise in terms of ticket sales. I'm sure he's killing it.
Yeah. And in terms of making 24/7 content entertaining to where you can always tune into the tank and something's happening.
Yeah, no, it's genius for entertainment value. I get why that would be super popular. You almost don't have to do anything. You just have to set it up and just let it go, let it run. But then it's also very high risk for exactly that reason, for a bunch of reasons. I mean, that's why they edit those shows so heavily, because a lot can happen that will be, threatening to the show, threatening to the producers, threatening to the other cast members, in terms of liability, in terms of all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I guess that's Sam Hyde, right? That's his high. He's always taken a high wire act.
He's the man. He's the man.
I've never really followed him. I've just seen him recently when he started popping up on Twitter doing those stunts.
Yeah.
But, well, God bless him. Fishtank.
Yeah. Right. Team Josie, Team John.
All right.
Here.
Cool.
Yeah. But so I bring that up to talk about Baudrillard, right? Did Baudrillard come up with that the medium is the message? Is that him, or is that who is that?
I never read Baudrillard. I don't actually know him. I don't. Medium is the message, I think, is actually Marshall McLuhan, isn't it?
Yeah, it's McLuhan. You're right. Yeah.
Okay.
McLuhan.
Yeah.
But McLuhan, medium is the message. I want to have this episode be a post-mortem or a obituary for the medium of cable TV. I think Tucker Tucker being ousted from Fox News. He's the last dissident voice, the last compelling voice ever on cable TV. He's the last talented cable news host.
I think we should do a New Orleans funeral march for this, right?
Yeah.
That's fitting. A celebration of the death of cable news, which is upon us now, I believe. A lot of people believe, now that Tucker's gone, there's nothing left at Fox, and there's certainly nothing left at the other. I mean, for anyone under 60, in other words, that's the point. Sure, the boomers will still watch all the cable news, but the Fox, I think 90% of their under 50 crowd watch Tucker and only watch Tucker. So, and that is the most coveted demographic, because if advertisers hook you when you're 20 or 30, they know that you've got like decades left in your life to buy their product. But if they hook you when you're 50, 60, 70, it's like, oh, okay, useful, but you're at most going to buy our stuff for a few years. So that's why that demo, the younger demo, is so crucial in media for advertisers. And Fox has now just thrown away all their young demographic with Tucker. And CNN and MSNBC never had that demographic. I mean, ask someone your age, if they ever watch CNN, how often they watch CNN or MSNBC. I mean, no one my age watches that stuff, except just the clips on Twitter. But we don't sit down and watch it in front of a TV ever.
Or if you're trapped in an airport, you watch CNN.
Right, when you're captive. So, I mean, a lot of us have been predicting the death of cable news for many years now. When you saw that demographic become very clear. It became clear like 10 years ago that cable was going to die because the audience was all old. But Fox made a brilliant move. What was it, 5 years ago or whatever, hiring Tucker to do the show. And he turned out to be this firebrand populist, and who has even though he's my age, he has a young vibe about him that brings in a very young crowd and a large crowd. I mean, he was getting multiple millions, I think, per night, and up to, I think, even 5 million some nights, something like that, live, I believe, something like that. But, and then they fired him. And here's the thing. I'm quite convinced, and there's a Washington Post article yesterday or today about Rupert Murdoch's decision, which confirms pretty much what I think, which is that he was fired because of his opposition, not just to the Ukraine war, U.S. support for Ukraine, but his severe skepticism of really the American imperial project, the whole thing. Skeptical of regime change wars, skeptical of occupations, skeptical of advanced deployment of troops in places that have no, national security interests for us. And the thing is, Michael, that has not been allowed in the political class in the United States, nor in the mass media, which is just the front of the political class, since about 1898. So with the Spanish-American War, and people probably know about the yellow journalism of the time, the Hearst newspapers pushing for war, sort of in some ways inventing kind of newspaper jingoism that we see nowadays, like when CNN during the Iraq War had that whole fancy graphic, kind of like branding the Iraq War and pumping it up and loving the media's loved the wars ever since. But not just that, the media and the political class, you cannot become president until Trump. Trump was the first one. You could not become president without being a firm believer, a devout believer, an unquestioning believer in the role of the United States as the global hegemonic superpower, whose obligation, by the way, is to go out and uplift all the peoples of the world, wherever they are, to protect the vulnerable and the weak. And this is what they actually believe. People who run American foreign policy, they really do. These are true believers. These are not sadists. They're just wrong, I believe, but it's that belief that has guided American foreign policy since the founding fathers. But as I said, became like law, unwritten law, with the Spanish-American War, which was the beginning of the overseas empire. So the United States conquered Cuba and the Philippines and colonized the Philippines for half a century, beginning then. And so the idea of the United States as a global empire was very firm at that point. And ever since, with Woodrow Wilson really expanding that idea, and then Franklin Roosevelt killing all kinds of people to expand that idea, and then Korea, Vietnam, all of it, right? And all the bases, the hundreds and hundreds of military bases spread across the world, and the biggest military in the history of the world, and all that American empire, all the international institutions being controlled by the United States, NATO, the UN, GATT, IMF, World Bank, all being controlled by the United States, the dollar being the reserve currency of the world, all that, English being the international language, the default international language, the United States dominating every trade deal it enters into, the United States having embassies in every country that dictate the policies of those countries in exchange for continued foreign aid or military aid. I mean, this is the American empire that's been built over the last century. And if you don't believe that is our sacred duty as Americans to do, we must go out there and protect those people. We must go out there and make their lives better. No one has been allowed to be president. No one has been allowed to be even senator who has really questioned that. Certainly not since World War II. But really, it became law. I mean, the isolationists questioned it for a minute. And interestingly, a few of them died right before World War II in very strange circumstances. But more importantly, they were isolated and ostracized and shunned. And since then, no one's been able to say a peep except for Donald Trump. So along comes Tucker Carlson. And of course, the mass media has been exactly the same, right? I mean, the New York Times, Washington Post, all these cable shows, cable news networks, they've all been right there, with the American Uncle Sam and the American flag flying across the world. They've all been pro-American empire ever since. So Tucker comes along And he has a change of heart. He once was, his father, I think he ran Voice of America, which is kind of like that's the media outlet for the U.S. imperialist government. And Tucker actually tried to be in the CIA. He actually was recruited to be in the CIA. And he tells the story about going. I think he went to Langley, did the interview, did the whole thing, and realized he didn't want to do it. But he then continued to be like a total neocon war hawk, total cheerleader for the Iraq War, gotten many famous debates pushing the Iraq War back in the 2000s. And then somehow, somewhere in about, I don't know, the 2010s, he started to change on a lot of issues. But he started with regret about the Iraq War, because when you live in the United States, everything comes back to being a superpower. Everything, all politics comes back to being a part of the superpower. So he questioned that big catastrophe and his role in it and his decisions about it. This is what he says. I've heard him say this. And that kind of led him into what we call like the nationalist populist direction, the Trumpist movement on various issues, including trade, which he used to be a free trader, and now he's very much a protectionist, harsher on immigration, but especially again about war and empire. He really flipped, and that's where MAGA is most exciting to me. But for whatever reason, well, because he regretted his decisions about the Iraq War, Tucker Carlson became essentially I would call him an anti-imperialist. He's not an anti-war person. He's an anti-imperialist. They don't like to use that word, but it's absolutely what it is. And he had to go because, again, as I said, that's the American political religion. The belief that the United States should dominate the world, that it is good for the world for the United States to dominate. That's the religion of the entire American political class and the entire mass media. And if you are an apostate toward that religion, you must be excommunicated. And that's really what this is. It's an excommunication of Tucker Carlson from the political class. And it's almost always over questions, believe it or not, of foreign policy and war and peace and the American empire, the continued American empire. That is what they will never compromise on. They can't. That's been America's identity for more than 100 years. And it's the identity of these people who grew up in families who believed that the United States should be dominant across the world. And they went to fancy prep schools in the East Coast and colleges where everybody knows that the United States should dominate the world. It's good for the poor people of Africa and everybody else for us to be there with our military. This is their firmly held belief. And these are liberals, by the way, like Samantha Power. So Tucker said, no, none of that makes sense. And in fact, it just makes for more war, more violence, more death, more destruction, and a broke United States. All the money we've spent and all the lives that have been lost, none of it's been worth it. So he became very close to, like a Scott Horton type on these questions. And that's why he had to go. This Washington Post article I just saw, it's the Post, so take it with a huge grain of salt. But still, I mean, they have no reason to misreport this. They said that Rupert Murdoch decided to get rid of Carlson mostly because of his Ukraine positions, that it was unacceptable to Murdoch. And that's how he decided over the weekend. Tucker ran, I think, a segment on Friday that was extremely harsh on U.S. policy in Ukraine. And Rupert Murdoch took exception to it, but he'd already been upset about it for weeks, apparently. And he made the decision on Saturday morning and called his son, Lachlan, who's the CEO, the acting CEO, I think. And they axed him, I think, on Sunday. And then Tucker found out right after that. But so that's why you can't cross the American empire and survive in the political class. You can have a podcast, which he probably will. I hope he will. I hope he has a podcast on Rumble. That would be the best thing for him to do. The truly free speech alternative to YouTube. And at least so far, that's doing really well and getting much more traffic on it and bigger audiences, and shows are doing really well on it. And I hate YouTube with a passion. And and anybody who believes in any kind of free speech and free inquiry should hate YouTube. And so Rumble, we all need to be rooting for Rumble and going to Rumble and watching videos on Rumble whenever we can instead of YouTube. Basically, we need like a low-key boycott, consumer boycott of YouTube. But so if Tucker goes to Rumble,
or starts his own network.
Yeah,
also.
but man, if he goes to Rumble, so I do believe the battle between Rumble and YouTube right now might be the most important conflict in all of American politics, and maybe even global politics, because we're throttled. I mean, they managed with the YouTube censorship to really throttle. We can't talk about stuff on YouTube. We can't talk about major issues. I can't even mention them. Everyone knows what they are. But it's not just the thing that happened for a few years starting in 2020 that we can't talk about on YouTube. But it's also stuff like foreign policy, like on the current war in that place beginning with you over there in Europe. You can't talk. Often channels get flagged just for critiquing the war. I mean, it's incredible. So Rumble must win. If Rumble wins and we have a true free speech platform that everyone goes to, that's dominant, game on. And just think about how American discourse and politics and culture is going to change. We will be back to the internet of the 2000s, the freewheeling internet, at least in the video broadcasting space. So
yeah,
Tucker, go to Rumble.
Yeah. For me, it's more like Fishtank really taught me this, that there are just people out there that have their own, they're plugged into different channels, and there's a lot of people who their only access to the outside world is the TV. And it does make me sad that that now boomers do not have a voice at all. They don't even hear any dissent. The boob tube, the box is completely uniform now.
Yep.
Yeah, they are completely there's nobody who questions the election. There's nobody who questions the war in Ukraine. There's nobody who brings on weird dissident voices from online to have a quirky interview. There's no there's nobody at all anymore.
Because now even Fox is saying what CNN is saying about Ukraine.
Yeah.
And everything else. The big issues. They'll fight over the culture wars, over trans stuff and silly shit like that. But over the big stuff, the economy, civil liberties, war, no, they all agree now. It's all locked down. They basically reverted back to the 1970s when we just had 3 networks and PBS, and they all said exactly the same thing. So that's where cable news is now. But fortunately now, and with the ascent of Rumble, though, we're on the verge of having a truly free internet again, back to the earlier internet, I think.
Well, I think I hate this term, but media literacy. The public just needs to be way more media literate, and they need to question FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, the same way they question the 3 major networks on cable. And they need to go back to using the internet like they did in the olden days, where they typed in a URL and just treated that website like its own thing, and had, in the same way that all of our phone numbers are now contacts in our iPhones. We only go to 3 websites nowadays, which is sad. But with Fox News and everything, I did not think Rupert Murdoch was an ideologue like this, which was really surprising.
I don't know if that's it. I don't think he's an ideologue. I think he's somewhat of an ideologue, but I think on this, it's more that he doesn't want to cross his deep contacts in the Republican Party. His connections there, his connections to the whole political class, not just the Republicans. But I mean, this is, and all the bankers and all the defense contractors that have advertised on Fox, and, remember, his connections to the ruling class are pretty profound, and they're unified on Ukraine, and they don't allow any opposition, any dissent at all. I mean, just think about the defense contractors alone.
Well, Tucker's name has been brought up, I think, in press briefings. He's been brought up on the floor of Congress as somebody that should not be allowed to be on TV.
AOC just called for deplatforming him.
Well, just celebrated his deplatforming, gloating. Yeah.
Well, no, but she was really calling for more. That's her whole point, was that she said deplatforming works.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Well, and here's the thing,
God.
Okay,
damn.
now he's in the alternative media space. Is he going to be treated like Alex Jones again? Is he going to have $1 billion defamation lawsuit coming on as soon as he goes live? Is he, now that he doesn't have the backing of Fox News to?
Oh yeah, and all their lawyers.
Yeah, and their lawyers.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the Fox News legal team? What that looks like? God,
oh my God, yeah.
So they just fucked up pretty badly and lost the company $800 million. But
well, at least he had a company that had $800 million to spend. If they lost, and
true.
Yeah,
I think I heard that's about a third of their cash
on
hand. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so I mean, Tucker, of course, everyone's like, well, you're pro Tucker Carlson. That I mean, on many things, I am. I have some problems with Tucker too. I think he uses ad hominem way too much. I think he makes fun of his opponents and sometimes his guests way too often. I wish he wouldn't laugh the way that he does at people during his show. It's unsettling and uncool in a lot of ways. He does. I mean, for a guy who's so smart and so principled, usually intellectually principled, he's usually quite principled. Every show, he'll do 2 or 3 ad hominem, nasty, just sort of insult attacks, which to me just undermine his credibility. And they're not funny. They're not particularly good. And I don't know why he does that. I think he's aware of it. I think it's sort of this reflex he has. Maybe it's from, decades of dealing with idiot libtards.
Well, I mean, it's the medium of cable TV. It's a theater. It's a, I think
he's nastier in that. It's kind of a juvenile thing. He doesn't, like Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly don't do that. They're assholes in a different way, but they don't do this kind of like laughing and calling people names. It's juvenile. And I don't, it's not cool. I don't get it. And I've heard him say he regrets doing that. I've heard him say that, that he too often insults people instead of addressing their argument, which, this is Tucker Carlson. Again, he's usually quite principled about this stuff,
But here's the thing: when you're dealing with 5-minute segments as opposed to a long form conversation, you got to punctuate. You can't treat people. Yeah.
Okay.
It's entertainment, dude. I see it as pro wrestling. I mean,
yeah, but I don't think that's entertaining. Like the way he sort of cackles at people. It's not.
Yeah. Well, I think he knows that he's the bad guy and he leans into that. I know that because a lot of his audience is Democrats. He has more of a Democratic audience than any other cable TV show, period. True. Young Democrats watch Tucker more. And he knows that if he cackles in their face and insults them to their face, they'll get riled up and they'll get angry and they'll come back next week to see him again. Like,
true.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Yeah. I just, again, I think he could be tough and in entertaining ways. I mean, Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity are tough as hell, but they don't do that stuff and they're still really entertaining. I mean, they built brands on that. And Tucker's my age, so it's not like he has no excuse. But anyway,
man, to me, he's number one. He's literally number one in terms of ratings. He's been the only voice for 7 years.
Sure.
I'm
sure. Yeah. I mean, on almost all the big issues, he's usually right from my perspective.
Yeah.
I agree with him usually on the big issues. Cultural stuff, no, I do not with him. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Man, I just remember back in the day when Facebook groups, political Facebook groups, before all the censorship came down on them and they were fun places to be. There was about a 3-month period where everybody changed their profile picture on Facebook to Tucker doing his puppy dog face, like confused. Like everybody was Tucker Carlson online for like 90 days when he first had his show. It was hilarious.
He's got that funny thing too. I mean, I can't blame him for this, but that funny deer in the headlights look when he's watching video.
Yeah, I can't do it, but yeah.
He cocks his head a little bit and he goes, it's kind of like his IQ just like drops 50 points, What do we got anything to watch?
Well, I could. There's that lady going after Tucker Carlson, alleging that he made a unsafe workplace. I don't really want to dwell on that necessarily. I mean, this is just this stuff was already in place. This is just infighting. I don't really care. Don Lemon got ousted too, which is just funny. I think we should just bring that up.
Yeah, poor Don. I mean, it's 15 years at CNN, and he was supposed to be he was brought in to be the great unifier.
Really?
Right?
Like,
yeah, light skinned, handsome black guy with
yeah.
middle class mores and a white, gay and a white with a white husband, and CNN, middle of the road, lowest common denominator kind of thing, broadest audience. That was his thing. He was brought in to do that, and to be like the middle of the road milquetoast, very politically correct black token.
Mm-hmm.
And he chose to become an attack dog instead over the years, which is odd since he was always playing to, the libtard audience. So I don't know why he felt that he needed to do that. But I mean, he just proved himself to be, one of the top 5 dumbest people in cable news. I mean, he's just not smart. He's just plainly just not capable of serious thought or of constructing serious arguments. So I'm glad to see him go. He was a constant toothache for me.
Yeah, I think this is 2012, but just a flashback. This was what Don Lemon was originally.
I know, he changed.
Yeah, you remember this?
Yep.
Because black people, if you really want to fix the problem, here's just 5 things that you should think about doing. Here's number 5. And if this doesn't apply to you, if you're not doing this, then it doesn't apply to you. I'm not talking about you. Here's number 5. Pull up your pants. Walking around with your ass and your underwear showing is not okay. In fact, it comes from prison when they take away belts from the prisoner so they can't make a weapon. And then it evolved into which role a prisoner would have during male-on-male prison sex. The one with the really low pants is a submissive one. You get my point? Number 4 now is the N-word. By promoting the use of that word when it's not germane to the conversation, have you ever considered that you may just be perpetuating the stereotype the massa intended, acting like a nigger?
Ooh.
Now, number 3.
Hard R.
Where you live. Start small by not dropping trash, littering in your own communities. I've lived in several.
2012 was a wild time.
In my life, I rarely, if ever, witness people littering. I live in Harlem now. It's an historically black neighborhood. Every single day, I see adults and children dropping their trash on the ground when a garbage can is just feet away.
Wow.
Just being honest here. Number 2, finish school. You want to break the cycle of poverty? Stop telling kids they're acting white because they go to school or they speak proper English. A high school dropout makes on average $19,000 a year. A high school graduate makes $28,000 a year. A college graduate makes $51,000 a year. Over the course of a career, a college grad will make nearly $1 million more than a high school graduate. That's a lot of money. And number 1, and probably the most important, just because you can have a baby, it doesn't mean you should, especially without planning for one or getting married first. More than 72% of children in the African-American community are born out of wedlock. That means absent fathers. And the studies show that lack of a male role model is an express train right to prison.
So 2012, so the end of the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. And this is what Obama was saying about black people throughout his presidency and even before his presidency. Every time, and I mean this every single time I studied this is true. Every single time Obama spoke to an entirely black audience, he said these things: pull up your pants. He had this famous sermon at a black church, and which he said, stop watching Sports Center and eating Popeye's chicken. Go out and get some real food for your kids and send them to school and grow up and be an adult. And the same kind of scolding of black people and black culture that the civil rights leaders did. Martin Luther King did this, and I wrote about this a lot in Renegade History. This is a long forgotten tradition in the black political class. They've been doing this since Reconstruction. Black political leaders, Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, Harriet Tubman, every one of them has called for black people to reform themselves in just these ways. And no one likes to talk about it. And they sort of collectively decided to forget about that right after Obama. So, sorry, that was mid-Obama. 2012 was mid-Obama. Same thing. The middle of the Obama administration is when he said this stuff, right? So he learned it from Obama, and it was okay then for a black person to say that stuff because of Obama. Obama made it okay again. Then Trump comes along, and we have this massive reaction, that makes it impossible for anyone to say anything about black people except that they're the most wonderful creatures on the face of the earth. And every single one of them deserves a Hollywood biopic because they're so saintly and perfect and wonderful, every black person, right? Yeah, so Don, you know, he rode the waves, of course. I mean, I don't think everyone's accused Don Lemon of being principled or being intellectually consistent. But I just noted that was an Obama era relic right there. That's the way the black political class was still talking about black people. The most anti-black stuff you'll see or hear by far in political rhetoric comes from black political leaders, like by far. I mean, almost all of it. I mean, in terms of public discourse that is sort of anti-black like that, it's always civil rights leaders and black Congress people and a lot of black ministers, a lot of black clergy say this about black culture all the time. Again, Martin Luther King, boy, sermon after sermon, you know, work harder, stop having sex all the time, stop drinking, stop doing drugs. This is Martin Luther King. Dress properly, speak properly, believe in work as a godly thing.
Clean up clean up the streets. Don't throw trash in the streets. Exactly, man.
Rock and roll is Satan's plaything, he said. He was anti-rock and roll. All of it. Yeah, he was opposed to black Christianity. He wanted black churches to basically be like white churches. He thought black preachers were too emotional and too loud and too flamboyant. He wanted them to be like straight, and look how he dressed, you know, the suit and tie all the time, perfect in his family, always like this perfect Christian family. You never saw Coretta and the kids not in white dresses, you know. And that's what he was. He presented himself as the perfect American citizen. And he demanded that all black people become that way so that they could assimilate and become first-class citizens. And that was the strategy, which basically worked to some extent. So, and then Obama became the apotheosis of that. Obama became like the end result of that whole process of civil rights assimilationism. He became the perfect American, perfectly disciplined, works hard, doesn't drink, doesn't have sex, apparently. All that. And Obama also carried with him this hatred, really. The black political class in this country has hated black culture for 200 years. People don't know this. They've hated black culture because it embarrassed them and because it stopped them from gaining further legitimacy. Because people could always say, see, look at those black people over there. That's the way you are. That we can't vote for you as president, until Obama came along and sort of proved that you could become just as perfect and boring and puritanical as any white person when you were black. And so, okay, we'll vote for that guy. The guy who like drank one Bud Light in 8 years. That was the extent of his hedonism. You know, he even stopped smoking, stopped playing basketball for a while, and no talk of sex with Michelle. So yeah, that's the civil rights strategy has always been that way. It's always been an attempt at cultural genocide. And I mean that, like cultural, they wanted to eliminate every vestige of black culture. Martin Luther King was opposed to jazz music until like late in his life. He was opposed to anything that was distinctively black. And that was Don Lemon right there. But yeah, the dude needs to go. I'm glad he's gone. I mean, it'll be curious to see. This will be interesting to see Don Lemon try to establish an independent channel. I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I think he should do Crossfire with Tucker. I think they should bring that back. And
he can't. He can't. He has no intellectual weight at all. Like he can't form an argument. I mean, he doesn't do that. He just talks shit. I mean, so I don't think he doesn't have anything to say is my point. I don't really, maybe I'm wrong.
No, he definitely has nothing to say, but he has a lot of confidence.
No, I just don't know if he has an actual audience who will really want to like find his podcast and listen to it on a regular basis because of what they will learn from it. You know, I just don't. It's going to be the same, whatever liberal pablum is being dished out.
No, he's just the guy that's on. He's not. I don't. Yeah, I can't wait to. You know what? I can't wait to see what Don Lemon has to say about this.
Right. I mean, he's nice to look at. He's very, very pretty. But other than that, maybe he should just do that, be a model or something.
Well, CNN should bring him back for New Year's and watch him get drunk and harass the co-hosts. That would be fun.
Right. But I mean, clearly Tucker will have a massive audience no matter where he goes. And if he started a podcast tomorrow, it would have millions of listeners immediately. I don't see that with Don Lemon. And, you know, and to me, that's really, podcasts are about, really, I think the ones that are successful have intellectual integrity to them, you know, and that's why people get really committed to listening to them. And Tucker's got that. and Don Lemon doesn't.
Another piece of cable TV was the Ray Epps puff piece that happened on 60 Minutes.
Amazing, yeah.
So 60 Minutes is known for playing sympathetic pieces about Trump supporters all the time, right?
Amazing. It's just incredible how do you want to show a clip or?
Yeah, I can, but yeah, keep talking.
Well, so does everyone knows about Ray Epps now, right? I don't know. Do we need to say, well, anyway, Ray Epps was this guy who was at January 6th, and he was like an oath keeper from Arizona, and he was wearing a MAGA hat, and he was walking around January 6th, the protests, telling everyone to go into the Capitol, go inside the Capitol. He would like walk right up to people and yell at them, "We need to go inside the Capitol." He was even doing this on the 5th, the day before.
Yeah.
And he kept doing it. And he ran up to literally led the charge up to the Capitol.
Which is, by the way, something he explicitly told people to go into the Capitol. That's where our problems are. We need to take it directly to these people. Yeah. That is something that Donald Trump did not say. That is something that Alex Jones did not say. That is something that Ali Alexander did not say.
Correct.
Yeah.
And at one point, he was so ridiculous in doing this that people started chanting at him, "Fed, Fed, Fed, Fed." Because it just seemed so obvious that he was working for the feds, trying to entrap people.
Yeah.
Well,
so this is the only person caught on camera. Basically, remember what the media said about January 6th and understand that this is the only person caught on camera making explicit incitements to violence. On that day.
Yep.
We are going to the Capitol. Who is Ray Epps? A former member of the Oath Keepers who served in the Marine Corps and was an ardent Trump supporter, or at least he was, until conservative media post-January 6th began insinuating that he was a government plant for the deep state.
What exactly was the role of Ray Epps in the chaos of January 6th?
No matter how many times they push this conspiracy theory, this lie, it'll never become truth.
Yeah. Ray Epps goes on to say, people like Tucker Carlson, they're obsessed with me. Like he's very media savvy. Sounds very scripted once again.
Well, so he was on the FBI's most wanted list, I think, for a day or two, and then they pulled his name off of it all of a sudden. And then, think about all the discourse and everything the Democrats have been doing about January 6th.
Think about the people who are rotting in jail currently.
I mean, think about what the discourse is about those people, right? Yeah. These are the worst villains in America right now. I mean, this is why they don't deserve, any civil rights. This is why they're rotting in jail without due process. I mean, these are the worst. These are insurrectionists. These are insurrectionaries. They should be put away forever. But they're defending Ray Epps. I mean, how could he not be a Fed? It's just, he wasn't called before the January 6th subcommittee or committee. They didn't call him. They called as they could have called him. They didn't mention. I think they didn't mention him really, except to defend him during the committee hearings. I didn't watch them, but I think that's true. But that's the thing. They're saying, "Hey, back off, poor guy," But wait, he's a January 6th insurrectionist. So there's only one reason 60 Minutes would run a sympathy piece about Ray Epps, which is that of course he was working for the feds.
No. He's a concerned patriot citizen who just wanted to have a peaceful protest. And
but the psyops used to be intelligent, right? Yeah. Am I right? I don't know. Well, you're too young to even know, but I mean, the good old psyops of the old CIA, they weren't so obvious to me. I don't know. It's incredible to me that the liberal mind has just descended into mush. It's the liberal mind is so dumb now that they'll fall for stuff like this because they want to believe it, because they want to believe that Trump is that evil so that they can be the good person.
Well, again, I can imagine a boomer, regardless of political affiliation, sitting down, a Republican could fall for that piece and say, you know what? I believe in America. Ray Epps is a good guy. You know what? He just got caught up in something bad. And that Tucker, he's just a conspiracy theory peddling, no-gooder. He just completely gets people riled up. You know what? I'm a good Republican. I'm going to vote for DeSantis. I'm not like those crazy Trump people. You know what? It's gone too far. I can see that happening so clearly.
Yeah. Like the establishment Republicans?
Just anybody who believes the TV, anybody who gets their.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, I just like 60 Minutes, especially as a program, holds so much weight in the boomer mind. Like that is church for a lot of boomers.
Well, one of the things that Fox did in canning Tucker was declaring a complete break from Trump now. Like they're now the anti-Trump network, or at least they have no connection to Trump anymore, which is quite something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're going to be pushing the establishment line, the establishment GOP line. And a lot of people will listen to that. And you're right, be persuaded. I mean, Americans are notoriously low information people, and quite dumb in politics. They're very smart in other things, but when it comes to politics, they know very little and are not good at thinking about politics either. And so they're easily, it's not hard to persuade a lot of them. You don't need to give them too much information to send them on some zealous journey, for justice, whether right wing or left wing. So yeah, it's Biden 2024.
Oh, okay.
That's where this is headed, is my point, is that, believe it or not, I have to think that Biden should be considered the front runner. However, news just in, get this, I don't know if you know this, RFK Jr. is polling consistently, I believe, at over 10% among Democrats.
Yeah, I saw him up there
in the primaries. So I saw one that was 14%, but get this, here's a statistic. No presidential incumbent has won the general election when a primary opponent had more than 10 double digits in the polls. So because they take too many votes away and they cause too much damage. They cause too much damage to the incumbent during the primary. If they have that much of a base, if they have 10% or more of the party, that means their own party is it's a civil war situation, which means the incumbent in the party will suffer major attacks, right?
Yeah.
During the nastiest attacks are often during the primaries. And that could chop Biden down. If RFK really goes after him, which he will, he's going to be chopped down even more. And Biden's age. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's just going to be a war of attrition, the presidential election. It's going to be which body can they drag up there.
I think Trump is doing as good, if not better, in his primary race than Biden, which is insane to think about. But beyond that, Marianne Williamson is attacking Biden from the left, so she's getting some of the younger socialists interested in her. But RFK is attacking him from the center. And in 2020, Biden promised to be the centrist unifying candidate, right? And I think a lot of people who voted for him with the benefit of the doubt to end the madness and who weren't so hardcore with the Democratic agenda might be open to RFK in a way that as a unifying figure again, or at least as a voice of real dissent from the middle.
You're not talking about him as potentially winning,
no?
Are you?
I see him as taking away a lot of the people,
disrupting.
Yeah, disrupting.
Being that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you, I didn't expect him to get more than 10%. It's amazing, boy. That Kennedy brand is powerful.
God, it is.
Because that family is fucking terrible. I mean, there's as satanic an influence in American politics as any family. Mm-hmm. Them and the Roosevelts are the two most malign influences in our politics. But
also on this tip, how adamant the Democrats are in not having a debate. When you've got somebody already in double digits, like I've seen polls anywhere between 12 and 19% for RFK, and I've seen Marianne Williamson get up to 9%, which is, especially now, that's very sizable, and they do not want to engage in any debates at all.
Oh no, I mean, well, their minds have atrophied. I mean, it's really true. Liberals used to be smart because they had to debate, because they didn't. The left liberals didn't control the media or academia fully, until like the 80s or 90s. I mean, there was actually, when I was in college in the 1980s, there were, a significant number of truly conservative or libertarian professors on campuses. I mean, there were always a few around, and even students, you know, but that's all gone now. And so back then they did have to debate, and that makes you smart, makes you sharp. And they lost that. By the 90s, it was a total monopoly in every sort of intellectual academic department. And so there was no debate whatsoever. They never had to cut their teeth against opponents. They never had to think hard about their own positions, right? Their most deeply held positions, they never had to think about them. And of course, everybody's most deeply held position is vulnerable, you know, to critique. I mean, there's nothing, no set of ideas is perfect or unassailable. And when you come across some like badass high IQ libertarian, and you've been a professor for, you know, 40 years saying the same thing over and over again, and everybody politely applauding you.
And you're arguing against a straw man Republican, not like a third option of thinking that you've never even thought of.
But you like run into some like, you know, 24-year-old neckbeard who lives in his mom's basement, but who like studies politics all day and all night and argues about it all the time with his friends and has read every book ever. Takes you to lunch. I mean, I've seen this happen. I think I've told this story here about Steven Crowder just absolutely destroying Adolph Reed, who is this very prominent Marxist professor at Penn, Ivy League, you know, very prominent. He's probably the most prominent Marxist intellectual in America. Steven Crowder like fucked up Adolph Reed so badly in this debate they had on HuffPost Live that Reed just ripped off his headphones and walked away and turned off his computer. He couldn't handle it. It was just a fucking like 20-something-year-old comedian makes this like heavyweight Marxist political science god into a child. So because Adolf never has to debate anybody who comes at questions from a fundamentally different perspective, right? Where they differ on fundamental big questions. The left is always debating stuff among themselves, but it's always over like, how much welfare should we have? Should we have like free healthcare and free colleges, or just free healthcare? I mean, it's that kind of debate. It's never, should you have healthcare? Should you have publicly subsidized healthcare? Boom. They're not used to that. Yeah. Same with the anti-war movement, by the way. They're terrible. I mean, they're not used to it. I've done this a few times where I've confronted some anti-war friends with, you know, what the neocon argument is, not characterizing it, but they have a real argument about why America should be the global hegemon. And it's a solid argument. These are smart people. And my anti-war friends usually get pretty flummoxed, I have to say, and are unable to really respond to the real heart of the argument of the opponents. And everyone needs to do that. You need to be checking exactly what your smartest opponents think, and then testing your arguments against it. You're going to atrophy. Your mind is going to atrophy. And that's exactly what happened to the left over the last 30 years. They took control of all the thinking institutions, academia and the media. And they have been talking to each other for 30 years and training our children. I was there. I was one of them. I know this. For the last 30 years, they've been talking to each other within universities and training our children. And now we are seeing the fruits of that project. And it's not pretty, but it's also not pretty in the intellect of these lefties who can't fashion an argument anymore. This is why I love Ben Burgess. Like, he's one of the few who does. That's what Ben does literally for a living. He makes arguments. He crafts arguments from a left-wing perspective.
He does it for fun too.
He's what?
He does it for fun too.
Right. Yeah.
He loves it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just adore that. You know, that's my favorite thing. So, but he's the rarity. And in fact, Ben's career is largely built because of that. Like, there's no competition. No one else is doing that on the left.
So Tucker released a statement either today or yesterday. I think it was last night, from his home studio, a little 2-minute monologue, perfectly spoken out. And it was basically saying, I believe that truth will win. And we had a great time, great run. Thank you so much. There's so many great people out there, but just be brave and speak the truth, because if you speak the truth will win. Mm-hmm. Things might look dark now, but speak the truth. And I think like that is the premise of a debate, right? In that, like, if you air things out, that's the only way you can get to the truth is at least seeing it, you know? Like, I think there is some idea of truth out there in the process of debate. Like, if you didn't believe in truth, why even debate? Like, you might as well just sidestep debate entirely and do some performance art thing, you know? And oh man,
sorry. Of course I disagree. I've had debates and I don't believe in truth.
Yeah, but
I've done formal Oxford debates and I don't believe in truth. No, you debate on the terms of the premise or the premises of the culture you're operating in. So, you know, is welfare a good thing within the norms of American culture, right? According to what we value as a culture, right? That's just comparing one thing against another, that neither one has to belong to you. You see what I'm saying? You don't have to believe in truth to debate.
Yeah, but that's sterilizing the debate and abstracting it into an art form, into an intellectual art form. It's not the true nature of the thing, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's nothing's at stake there. It's a completely pure, sterile intellectual exercise in that case.
The other thing I do, as someone who doesn't believe in truth but engages in debate every day pretty much, is I argue on behalf of something I value, not something that I put forward as an absolutely true thing, right? It's just something, I like this thing, I want more of it, or I want less of it, or whatever. So here's an argument for why you should join with me. And then I talk about your values, and then I compare our values, and I try to appeal to you by saying, you know, we have a shared value here, and therefore we should join together in a political coalition to achieve the value through politics. There's never once an appeal to absolute morality, absolute truth. It's just my value, which is arbitrary. It's just I chose it, and your value, and you chose it, but we want to pursue those values.
That's a very Austrian economics view of debate.
They're good. They're smart on that stuff. I don't see any other way to. Yeah,
it's a subjective exchange of value happening. It's
it's transactional. Yeah. There's no claims about absolute truth necessary. And this could be applied to anything in politics. You can take an anti-abortion position without making an absolute truth claim, right? Because you can just say, I don't want to live in a world where fetuses are pulled out of wombs. Like, I just don't like it. You can just say, just because I'm disgusted by it or whatever. That's fine. That's not any claim outside of your own consciousness. You're not making a claim about absolute morality or truth. You could do it about war. I mean, I want to live in a world where there is war in Ukraine, or I want to live in a war where it isn't war in Ukraine. It's not saying it's a good or bad war even. It's just saying I don't like it, or I do like it. So, you know, you can do all the politics you want without this stupid absolutist moralism.
So, well, okay, Tucker's broad appeal is his absolutist moralism, I think.
Yes. He, in fact, directly attacks relativism and even sort of uses the term postmodernism as a synonym for that, which, you know, it's fine with me, because to me, relativism is, for me, at the heart of postmodernism, and that's what is most important about it. Yes. And it's the relativism of postmodernism that I like the most about it. But and I think I did a decent job just there of explaining how you can get rid of belief in absolute truth and still engage fully in a political life and be political.
For me, it's not about asserting the truth in a debate as much as it is trying to engage in discovering the truth.
Well, but again, if you sort of presume that there is a truth that sort of guides your process, your pursuit, it sort of puts bounds in a way, right? Puts lanes out there for, you know, direction you should go in, right? Because you assume that the truth is out in some particular place, and then you sort of head in that direction. So why not just be about the exploration of the world around you, wherever your mind takes you? Just let it go.
Yeah.
Zen, man.
Hey, real quick side argument. I just blocked somebody in the chat for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. The better chat is happening on Rumble, actually. The people are a lot cooler there.
Of course.
There's somebody in this chat that just like wanted to talk about Trump and Stormy Daniels the whole time.
That's who you blocked?
Yeah. He was just placing like screw emojis, like oh, Trump is lying about.
Why would they bother with that?
Because
that's so silly.
That's not what we're talking about. Like,
no.
Yeah, you can't just barge into somebody's house and start yelling about some.
Here's the main thing. Here's the heart of the matter with the Stormy Daniels Donald Trump story.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has called her a horse face, and it's not true. It's a slander, and I won't have it. And that's really the end of that discussion.
Okay. Well, I think
I hope he doesn't get. I hope he doesn't get convicted. Also,
yeah, same. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that Michael Cohen was the guy who actually.
Oh yeah,
had the transaction with Stormy Daniels.
Slime ball par excellence, man.
Yeah.
Again, this is like part of the evidence that Trump is really shitty at hiring people.
Mm-hmm.
God, that guy appointed more fucking snakes than anybody in history. Think about the scumbags who like double crossed him.
Yeah.
Alone. I mean, just the double crossing is incredible. God, these people would just like fall for any cash at all.
Mm-hmm.
They would. Oh man. And then, John Bolton, what the fuck are you thinking, Don? Like, he's the opposite of what you believe in. I bet I've never heard an explanation for why Trump did that.
That's the thing about 2024, man, is like, if it's Trump and Biden again, you're going to have some serious just people clocking out and not caring about politics for the foreseeable future at all. Like, no hope at all. Just, yeah.
As I was saying, Stormy was hot. And
okay.
Not so much maybe nowadays, but she was. So yeah, or hot enough. Don't call her a horse face, man. I just don't like people making fun of people's looks. It really bothers me. But anyway, let's talk about something way sexier. The war in Sudan.
Oh, damn. Yeah, man. There was okay. Sudan is wild. Like, there's the full-scale almost genocide in 2003 in Darfur. But now it's the grounds of a proxy war once again between the United States and Russia, right? There's two generals fighting it out, and one's got Ukrainian, Russian Wagner aid, and the other side's got some NATO alliance aid.
It's an incredible story. It's an incredible story, and it's great to know about because it really helps you understand what's going on in geopolitics, because it's kind of all encapsulated in this little country, So it's Sudan's in Eastern Africa. It's on the northern part of the Horn of Africa. It has 7 neighbors: Egypt to the north, and Ethiopia to the south, and Chad to the west. But way, way, way more importantly, and this is why anyone cares about Sudan, is that it is on the Red Sea. And every single day, 2 million barrels of oil that are headed to Western Europe from the Gulf, from the Persian Gulf, go through the Red Sea on their way to the Suez Canal and to Western Europe. So, and then about, I think it's 10% of all world trade goes through the Red Sea on these cargo ships. Captain Phillips, right? I think that was in the Red Sea, the hijacking movie with Tom Hanks. That's why those hijackers, those pirates were there. It's because of all those ships with all that valuable stuff on it. So then you have right across the Red Sea, you have Saudi Arabia. So the Sudan and Saudi Arabia kind of look at each other. And Saudi Arabia has just now gone with Russia and China and essentially become a partner of BRICS, dissing for the first time the United States, leaving the United States orbit and going with this new adversary. So that's Saudi Arabia right next to Sudan across the Red Sea. Yemen, the war in Yemen just stopped. Iran and Saudi Arabia just signed a peace deal. Yemen is largely controlled by Saudi factions and Iranian factions. That's why they were at war. But now they're all unified. And now they're all, guess what? With Iran, who is also with Russia and China. So this whole alliance keeps forming, right? You got Iran, you got Saudi Arabia now together with Russia and China, then Yemen, then right across the Red Sea. You've got Ethiopia has been very friendly to Russia. And then Egypt in the last year has opposed all the sanctions on Russia and moved closer and closer to close relations with Putin and Russia. So that whole region around the Suez Canal, just south of Israel, where the energy supply for Europe flows, your allies in Western Europe, they get their oil from the Red Sea. All those barrels go right by Sudan, right by the port of Sudan. So Russia has been trying to get a military base, a naval base built in Sudan on the Red Sea for, I think, years. And the government in Sudan was like hemming and hawing about it, going back and forth, and they had their own coups and own civil wars, and governments changed all the time and whatever, went back and forth. But finally, the latest government, which is the product of a military coup, they agreed, I think 2 weeks ago. No, sorry, in February. In February, the Sudanese government agreed to allow Russia to build a naval base and on the Red Sea in Sudan. Then a month later, Victoria Nuland went to Sudan to meet with them, and we don't know what she told them, but she said it was to discuss democracy. And now we have a civil war in Sudan, and the civil war is between two factions of the military. So the government is controlled by one faction of the military. Then you have the Rapid Response Unit, I think it's called, which is this rebel army. And here's the problem. So the Sudanese government is obviously sided with Russia, and the US now is opposed to them. And the problem is there's been reports that the Wagner group has been training the rebels too. This is unconfirmed mostly, but there's been a lot of reports that Russia is also close to the rebels. So Russia is almost certainly going to have its Navy base on the Red Sea.
Yeah. Man, I wonder, because I've been seeing this in mainstream news outlets real quick. I've been seeing this in mainstream news outlets. So that makes me a little skeptical that perhaps they're exaggerating the role of Russia in order to, paint them as a adversary,
as an imperialist.
Yeah.
They really are getting this Navy base. That's for sure. It is a small Navy base. Apparently, I've heard that it's only going to be a few dozen Russian sailors and soldiers who will be there, but still, it's a foothold. It's a foothold in Africa, in this strategically vital place, and again, surrounded by all these countries that are flipping toward Russia and China. So this is yet another piece of Middle East and North Africa, the oil region, the energy region that is moving toward China and Russia and away from the United States. A new world order is upon us. So when Sudan is about to essentially fall, meaning go with the other alliance with this, and maybe you won't be able to ship your oil through the Red Sea anymore because it's surrounded by allies of your enemy. Maybe. That's one thing. Western Europe could be choked off. You could choke off a lot of, and some 10% of the world's trade. So all sorts, not just oil, but tons and tons of commodities go through the Red Sea, headed for Europe, Western Europe, the NATO countries. So you could choke off NATO. If you're Putin and you're evil, whatever. I'm just saying, in their minds, they have to plan for this. But that is what is now on the cards. He now actually does have the power, or he's about to have the power to do just that. To choke off the world's energy supply and trade routes. And that's how you win. That's how you become dominant. I don't think Putin cares to do that, but now he technically can.
He blew up his own pipeline, so we know that.
Yeah, exactly. He is a madman.
Yeah.
He is a madman. Yeah. And then he killed that journalist who then reappeared a few years later in a press conference. But yeah. My interview with Glenn Deason, I can't wait for it to come out, but we went through all the alleged assassinations of journalists that were carried out by Vladimir Putin, and it turns out that they're all bullshit. Mm-hmm. But anyway, but I am paid. You and I get paid really well by the Kremlin, so we probably shouldn't.
Yeah. And the United States doesn't do anything to their journalists here. Julian Assange is celebrated.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, James Risen, I think, went to prison, didn't he? This was the New York Times guy who, what was it? Something national security state thing. He refused to hand over one of his sources, I think.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
And he went to prison for something along the lines of treason or something. I don't know. I think it was treason, something like that. But anyway, not treason, but something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, treason is the death penalty.
Yeah, no. There's also tons of dissident journalists in Russia. Like, it's really silly the way people think about it. It's not like there's freedom of speech exactly in Russia.
Isn't that hilarious? Like, they always talk about how unpopular Putin is in Russia, but at the same time he squelches dissent all the time. So like, they highlight all the dissent that happens, but at the same time he squashes dissent. Whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. It's all such bullshit. I mean, you can tell when you're talking to someone who lives in Russia. It's just obvious. I mean, that it's just not that way. I want to go back. I was there in 1987, and I'd love to go back and see how it's changed since the Soviet era when I saw it. I'm so lucky that I got to see the Soviet Union in person.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, so that's the whole world is turning. And Bakhmut now, the Russian forces are now in the center of the city. Yesterday they took the train station. It's funny how like minute this is getting, but I'm telling you, when Bakhmut falls to Russia, everything's going to accelerate. Everything that's going on in the Middle East, North Africa, the whole geopolitical world is going to just continue, going to change even faster. And once Bakhmut falls, that's kind of the linchpin of the whole thing. And this whole apparatus is going to come up clearly in everybody's minds. Everyone's going to become aware very soon that we live in a different world geopolitically, that it is two totally new alliances facing off against each other, and we don't know what they're going to do to each other, but it's here. And Sudan, when Bakhmut falls and they take Sudan, yeah, Russia, China, baby, you better be nice to them and trade with them instead of trying to go to war with them, because they are some bad motherfuckers right now. And I don't want to war with them. I just want to do what they want to do, which is to trade with us. They don't want to conquer us. They don't want to invade us. They don't want to change our language or our culture. They don't care. They want to get rich and powerful and let us trade with them. That's what they've always wanted. That's what they've demanded. They've asked for over and over again. And that's why can't we just do that? Let's just let them be in Eurasia, take our troops out of there, take our military out of there, and let's get back to dealing and trading and getting cheap goods for Walmart.
That Jake Werner episode that came out this week
is amazing.
Yeah, please send that to your boomer parents, or send that to the boomer in your life who wants to invade China. Like that.
Yeah, China. It's by far the best presentation of the anti-interventionist argument about China. You will not see a better 90-minute presentation of that argument. You will get, I'm not saying you should believe it, but you're going to get every point in that episode about why China is not a threat. If you want to know whether China is a threat to you, watch this episode. In 90 minutes, you will see the best argument anywhere that it is not a threat to you. You should also seek out Gordon Chang immediately, who's a very belligerent. He's a Stanford professor. He's an expert, very smart guy, who takes a totally opposite tack and sees China as a definite threat to Americans. And he wants the American government to take, I think, belligerent action, probably military action against China. So you should check him out too. Don't believe just Jake Werner, but definitely please listen to Jake Werner. And he'll give you, as Michael said, great ammunition to talk to your boomer parents about.
Yeah, especially, I mean, as much as we love Steve Bannon, he's the
problem. He's the problem.
Trump. Yeah, him and Trump, like it. I mean, the Democrats hate Russians at an almost visceral ethnic level, and it gets to that point a lot of times with Republicans in China, that it's just they're the enemy. They're the other superpower that we need to take down. Like,
yeah, but now they agree. Well, I mean, now they agree on China. Everyone, all the people in politics now agree on China. Steve Bannon got his way. He got the Democrats to go with him hard against China. And the establishment, of course, all is united against Russia too. But yeah, but please, Jake Werner, the latest episode, I'm very proud of that episode. But it's because of Jake. Jake just does an amazing job of laying it out. Brilliant guy. Why you should not be afraid of China, and just go buy their cheap stuff at Walmart instead. How about that?
Cool.
All right, man. Well, Icarus Fest. Go to IcarusFest.com. Check that site over the next couple of days. We're going to be making a huge announcement, but it's already pretty amazing. Go check out the lineup already. And Unregistered Live begins now. Michael and I are going to go over there. It's a Zoom meeting with patrons of the show. And if you want to become a patron of the show and join us at Unregistered Live, you can hang out with us, do whatever you want. It's unrecorded, and everyone, you can be anonymous. Go to patreon.com/unregistered and join up at any level. And the link to Unregistered Live will be right there. You'll see it there posted today. Click on that and hang out with us. It's pretty cheap. Pretty great mode of entertainment.
Yeah. We were talking about slaves earlier, And
yeah,
as we always do.
That's an interesting goodbye, Michael.
Yeah, I know, but
just Mom. Oh, by the way, did you know about slaves?
Yeah. I caught like the peak of Paul Vanderklay last night in class.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Which is
holy Christ. Oh, holy Christ, I just said. Yes. It was one of the greatest experiences ever intellectually. We'll release it some way or another soon. My interview with Paul Vanderklay of the amazing Paul Vanderklay YouTube channel. He insists on calling himself just a pastor, but he's definitely a theologian. And he's one of the best and most popular, I'd say, popularizers of Christian analysis and intellectual analysis. A very deeply learned, super smart, articulate guy. Very, very brilliant. And we talked about the Gospel of Matthew and Christianity generally in ways that I don't think anyone's ever heard before. It's one of my all-time favorite unregistered episodes, but it's also part of our course. We had members of Unregistered Academy in the interview there asking Paul questions.
Did you get my... I didn't see the end of it, and I need to go back to it, but did you ever get to my question about Genovese and the slaves having the true religion?
But wait, just let me say, so that's the Paul Vanderklay interview, which Unregistered Academy members were attending and participating in. It's part of our Bible course. We're in the middle of our Bible course, which will be available for streaming video very shortly, or you can join now for the last live class next Tuesday or Wednesday. But it's one of my favorite courses of all time, and we're having amazing guests. And anyway, so yes, you were saying Eugene Genovese?
Yeah, Eugene Genovese.
Unregisteredacademy.com. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, he made the argument in his book that the slaves had an interpretation of Christianity that actually liberated themselves, and that the master's Christianity that they forced on them was not the Christianity that they ended up learning and internalizing, and that it actually led them to acknowledge a higher power than their master. It allowed them to, see the world in a different way.
Yeah, Paul and I talked about the differences between white Christianity and black Christianity, at least in the United States, and the stark differences. That was and he's from a church. He's a pastor of a church, and his father was the pastor in the same church that is largely African-American and urban, even though Paul's a white guy. So it's very interesting, very, very interesting guy. The black church. Yeah, they made Christianity fun. They made Christianity fun. The slaves did.
Well,
that's what I say. That's what I said to Paul last night. That's the main contribution.
Nietzsche criticizes Christianity as a slave morality, but a lot of modern Christians would take that with pride, would own up to that and be happy about it.
Well, but American slaves did not practice slave morality. That's what's funny.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. I mean, Nietzsche did. I don't know if he ever said that, but American slaves did not have a slave morality. They did not. Everyone else did. Everyone else in America, the normal Americans, the citizens, they possessed a slave morality largely, but we can talk about this some other time.
Yeah. Well, the last shall be first. I'm last. Now I'm first. Great.
Right. Exactly.
Cool.
All right, man. We got to go.
Peace. Yeah, we'll talk on the other side.
All right, man.
Yep. See ya.
Peace.